Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Mr. Barber, what brings you back to the fox den? This must mean we are going to once again dive in to the Dogman. Yet, before we do hunt these beasts, I must recharge. Much better. Absolutely delicious. And now that I no longer have any restraints, it is time for Bigfoot's Barbershop and Midnight Lycanthropy to once again take a walk into the darkness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf, and everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night. Yes, I do hope everyone has had a good holiday season and is ready for the new year. I do know here at the North American Dogman Project, StarFox Radio, and Midnight Lycanthropy, we have a ton of things cooking up in the oven tonight. Yes, Bigfoot's Barbershop, aka Brian Barber, is once again sitting around the late night fire and burning the midnight timber in an attempt to figure out what is happening up in the 207, yes, aka Maine, my stomping grounds. How you doing tonight, man?
We're doing good. We're busy prepping to prep for a show. You'd be surprised how much prep goes into prepping for a show.
Yeah, I mean, I can only remember, like, when I used to act and model and such, I had to, go through, I would say, spurts where I couldn't really eat as much as I would have preferred, and, for photo shoots and such. So I totally dig it, man. But what else you been up to?
Today I went and stuck a recorder out. I was able to get back into my area, so hopefully that something happens tonight, but we'll see.
That's cool, man. How's that all been going?
Good. It looked like there was some new signs of life out there, just a little short hopping I could do. So I'm very hopeful that there's something happening, because right now the weather's holding. As long as it doesn't rain, I think we'll get some good stuff on that mic.
That's cool stuff. I mean, with the hobble, though, I don't know. What are you gonna do?
I always wonder if when people go out, whether it's Bigfoot, Dogman, or Skinwalkers, if they can sense that wound.
I mean, of course, bro. Like, I mean, I think any predator, known or unknown, can pick up on that. I mean, that's what they specialize in. That's how they know which ones to pick out from the herd. Not saying you're weak, but I mean, an injury is an injury.
Right, and my dog picks up on it. My little puppy, man, as soon as I put my foot down, he's over there licking that one bad toe, and he picks it every single time. It's like, what are you smelling? And get away from it.
He's smelling the decay of it. That's pretty gnarly stuff, man. But Well, at least you still have your toe at the moment, man, but that's pretty not good. And yeah, you should probably be careful if you put yourself out in that situation and you can't. Not even, I guess, if you could run full speed would it really matter, but at least psychologically it would feel better, correct?
Right. And even when I tore my tricep, it always felt different if I was hurt. I tore my tricep, I tore my bicep. I went out there after losing my gallbladder and pancreatitis, and until that fully recovered, it always felt just a little off, like they were paying a little more attention to me than I wanted.
Yeah, that would make sense. And that is brutal, man. I mean, you're turning into what's that old school show? Was it the Bionic Man or the $1 Million Man or something like that?
$6 million man.
Yeah, there you go, bro. That's so funny, man. That is so funny. That actually reminds me to, a little bit off topic, but funny. Ted DiBiase, I can't even say his name right, man. The $1 Million Man.
Oh yeah, with Virgil.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what he based that loosely off. But again, I haven't watched that since I was a kid. But
Oh yeah, it was. I forget it, had the $1 million belt and everything with it.
yeah, it's so funny, dude. So funny. So when it comes to obviously you being in Michigan, I mean, you're right in the heart of the potential area of where the whole, Dogman thing has been pretty relevant. Have you heard too much about it up here in the Northeast? I think I've told you a few encounters, but surprisingly, the oldest Michigan encounter is actually not even as old as the original case up here in Maine, which is pretty interesting.
You've I've taken more interest since you started talking to me, especially about that one family that got surrounded that night when they
Yeah, the
were around me.
Palmyra incident, that one's pretty gnarly for sure. And the two original ones are involving a mailman that was riding his horse and buggy outside of Bangor, and he was ambushed by what he said were large, black, strange looking wolves, and a couple of them were bipedal. He was able to fend them off, but they chased him back to where he was delivering his package. And then you have another instance of farmers, male and female, that were working the fields and refused to go back out there because they reported seeing something bipedal, large, and jet black that seemingly was watching them all the time.
It's crazy the amount of cases that I just didn't pay attention to before because my whole thing was Bigfoot growing up. Yeah, I think I didn't take interest in the Dogman until my mom told me the story of their encounter, which I just kind of blew off. And then, really, as bad as this sounds, and I hate to admit it, but until Dogman the song came out, I didn't pay much attention to it. And then after that, it was like, okay, maybe. But now that since I've been talking with you, it's like, to me, they're every bit as real as, the giant imaginary monkeys I'm supposed to be feeding in the woods.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting one, that's for sure. I could never really figure out which one I thought was cooler, vampires or werewolves. So just obviously growing up and finding that intriguing when I did have a chance to then hear about those strange sightings where it supposedly looked similar. It just always was one of those things that when I'd go to bed and such, I'd listen to those because I don't know, man. It just always sparked an interest. And then I fell upon Jody and Monster Quest and Linda Godfrey, which really then blew my whole entire mind because previous to that, I had vaguely heard about it, but it was hard to gather information and really get quality stuff off the internet at that point in time. So, yeah, pretty gnarly, man.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Halloween because that's the reason I slept with a nightlight until I was 14. Because way back in my day, as your grandpa would say, HBO was the only paid channel, and my dad was a light sleeper. He had gone to sleep, and it's like 2 a.m. and the movie Halloween came on HBO, so I turned the channel. Well, he woke up and turned it back, and he says, "Now you're going to watch it, and if you touch it again, I'm going to beat your hiney." So I was forced to sit there, and of course, I'm scared to death, so I can't sleep and watch Halloween. At the age of 9 or 10, back whenever the pay-per-view was, or pay channel was for HBO, and literally a nightlight till I was past 14. So,
That's pretty funny, man. I mean, I used to do something similar. I would do the little army crawl down the hallway to my parents' room, and they would have their door either open or cracked, and I would just be like sneakingly watching what they were watching, and it would be anything from like Critters to like, yeah, like you said, Friday the 13th, Halloween, American Werewolf in London, The Howling, I mean, whatever. But the one that really traumatized me the most was a Freddy Krueger one. I don't even remember because I'm not a fan of just slashers, so I still haven't seen all those. But there's just one scene in one of them where someone gets like pinned up to the wall and like all their blood just like drips down. So after I seen that, I went back to my room, and for literally months, maybe even like a year, I would just see blood dripping down from the ceiling in that spot. But obviously it's not there. I was like, dude, what the heck, man? Way to traumatize yourself. No wonder your parents were like, dude, don't watch this stuff. Like, go to bed. But me just being myself, like I said. So that did stem my interest. And man, I couldn't even finish American Werewolf in London until I was, I think, either 17 or 18, man. My parents told me when I was 16 I could watch that with them if I want, and I couldn't get past the part the first time where the people got destroyed on the moors, the guy and his buddy. That like just mentally traumatized me. And then the next round when I tried it again, I couldn't get past the part where he was transforming. And then I finally was able to get through it, like when I said like a 17 or 18, but it was pretty gnarly, man, for sure.
yeah, the it's funny because we had a parallel part there, because vampires didn't bother me. Fright Night actually got me wanting to look more into vampires, the original Fright Night, because Jerry Dandridge was just so cool. But American Werewolf in London traumatized me on werewolves. I couldn't watch a full werewolf movie until the one with Anthony Hopkins. Was it Wolf?
Yeah, I've actually never seen that one, but I have heard about that. Yes, I believe it is Wolf.
That was the first one I could finally finish. Oh, otherwise, werewolves terrified me. Out at night playing football or something with the neighbors on a full moon, forget it.
Yeah, that's pretty gnarly. There's actually a really messed up scene from a show that was on, which was not good nor bad, just very bizarre. There we go. Hemlock Grove on Netflix. There was a beginning part of this werewolf chasing this girl that was like, texting her friend that she was going to come over, and she's waiting at this, I believe it was for a train to pass, and all of a sudden this werewolf drills the side of her car so hard she's like spinning all around, gets up out of the car, starts running, and this werewolf is like chasing her, and she jumps into this little like dog house or something, and she's hiding in there, and then the werewolf just absolutely dices her. But it's one of the best werewolf scenes without showing it that I've ever seen, for sure. But I would have to say my big beef with that show is, like I said, it's bizarre, but also the werewolves, they don't change. They rip their human skin off, and then they're not really werewolves. They're kind of like wolves from True Blood, which I wasn't a fan of those werewolves either.
Yeah, I haven't seen either one of those yet. The tearing of the skin always gets me. When you
Yeah.
actually like the skin come apart, and Because to me, that's what the transformation would be. It wouldn't be you just start growing hair and your nose gets long, but the actual physical coming apart.
Yeah, which I get that for sure. It's just weird that this wolf would already be inside of you when they rip themselves apart. Like, so like they start pulling their mouth open and the wolf's snout like comes out and then they just like rip them. It's hard to explain, and it's not really an interesting take in my mind. It's just, I don't know. I guess some people like it, whoever made the show and whoever watches it and such. But yeah, same thing in True Blood. They are just like wolves, kind of like in Twilight, man, just like larger wolves. To me, when I'm thinking, those would be more skinwalkers. To be quite honest with you, that would be a skinwalker depiction. Like it always says, he or she on all fours. To me, like Rise of the Lycans, Underworld, man. I mean, that big crazy white werewolf and stuff. Like those are werewolves.
Yeah, it makes me wonder when, I watch like Monster Quest and Terror in the Woods and stuff, when you hear people talk about when they stand up, all the cracking going on. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that a few different times, which is interesting for sure. And yeah, I don't know if it's because, like I had said, a skinwalker is just pushing that animal's body past its natural joint range, or if it just kind of has like that capability of, sitting back more. But as far as I know, any other animal, like apes and things and baboons and squirrels and anything that can go quadrupedal to bipedal, I've never heard them crack when they like stand up and stuff. But yeah, I have heard that though in, reported supposedly Dogman encounters. Pretty bizarre for sure. What do you think?
I wonder if it's because if there's potentially a bone growth, and because I know several people who, when they stand up, you can hear their knees crack because it's bone on bones and there's no meniscus left on one side or something.
Mm-hmm.
So you can sit there and hear it crack. It's like, oh, holy cow, don't that hurt? No, I don't even feel it. So I almost wonder if it's like something like that and a dislocation, relocation type thing.
That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, that's kind of where I was going with my mind in that direction. I hadn't thought about that first part you said, but, the latter part about like the, joint kind of disconnection or like rolling over, meaning like I've had issues where my tendon was super tight and it would roll over my ankle. So it would sound like the ankle was popping, but it was actually the tendon rolling over the joint, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mentioned Fright Night earlier, but that one scene where he pulls the pencil out of his hand and then he cracks his knuckles.
Yes.
I worked for a year and a half to finally be able to do that. So now I can do that, but and you can feel it's like tendons rolling.
Mm-hmm.
But you get that knuckle cracking sound.
Yes, so exactly. But it's like the tendon going over the joint. Yes, because I used to think it would be my ankle releasing, calf would be super tight or something, or my IT bands. But yeah, it was actually the tendon being tight. Yes, I was still tight, but it wasn't the actual joint releasing in my ankle like I thought it was. It was just a tendon rolling over it.
Yeah, my knees will pop once in a while on a heavy leg press, and every time it does, it's like, this is where I unalive myself. When you hear that pop, and it's just instant fear when you got 600 pounds over you or whatever I'm doing at the time. But
yeah, that's gnarly, dude. The only time I get the pops and stuff is when I do my like foam rolling and my grasping for my injuries, man. But yeah, I'll get huge disconnections up in my back and stuff, and it definitely feels good, but you can feel where your body's like, oh crap, now I'm in the correct spot. It'll take like a couple hours for it to feel like comfortable. Whereas at first, when you first release it, it feels good in your back, but then when you stand up, you can feel like your knee a little wonky because you're still kind of tight on that side, man. So no, I totally feel that for sure, man. And that's why I made that reference to you. If you're out in the wild, you definitely want to make sure you can just get away, because like for myself, I can't just be like, oh, hold up, dog man, my back real quick, relocate this. All right, cool. Now I can run. No, it doesn't work like that. As soon
Exactly.
as you stop and you're like, oh crap, there you go, you're done.
Well, in a way, it kind of, I'll try to bring it back around with this, but if I go missing because I'm wounded, sounds like something that your case you're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, no,
That's a
exactly. Which
weird way to
is,
wrap. I'm sorry, but
uh, yeah, it's one of those things you definitely need to make sure that you do have a chance. But I mean, yeah, in this encounter, it didn't really seem to matter because I mean, they were younger men that were supposed to be more or less in the prime of their life and didn't really seem to fend too well for them. So, yeah, let me bust this case open for you and see what you think about it because it is from a member of the North American Dogman Project. And he did lose a few of his friends here that are still missing. And this gentleman's name is Lee Bucher, and he is still active with us up in the state of Maine, but he has definitely had some traumatic kickback from this, which, after hearing this, well, I mean, I can't really fault the guy for having trauma from this. I mean, I had trauma from watching a Freddy Krueger movie, okay? So, I mean, it is a real thing. And if this did occur to me, well, I probably would have similar, responses as to how Mr. Bucher did. He still, wants to find answers. And just recently, actually, this summer, went back up to the area where this all occurred to try to look around and just really process everything. He hadn't been back up there since this occurred. And yeah, so Friday, June 23rd, 1995, Rangeley Lake State Park, and that is up here in the good old 207 Maine. You have Lee Bucher, who is with us here at the NADP, Mike Ratcliffe, Nathan White, Luke Gray, and Sean Elliott. They are best friends and have all freshly graduated from Gold Academy and have decided to take a weekend camping and hiking trip to a remote part of the wilderness. After the long ride to their destination, the five friends get out of their cars, gather their gear, and begin the long trek to the campsite they have picked out on the map. After arriving and setting up their tents, the men sit down and begin to eat dinner. Lee stands up and agrees to go down to the nearby stream to fill up a bucket of fresh water so that they can drink and also put out the fire before bed. As Lee is filling up the bucket, he begins to hear loud snapping of twigs in a thick brush area. Suddenly, he turns around and he sees a glimpse of a massive black wolf-like creature slowly moving behind a tree. After seeing the man noticing him, shaking his head to do a second take, Lee does not see this strange beast that he swears was just leaning out from beside the tree, glaring at him. While standing there and still trying to process what it is he had just witnessed, Lee begins to notice the forest around him has become silent. Brushing it off as nothing, he returns to his friends. At around 9 p.m., the campfire has begun to burn down to the coals, and as the group is entering their tents and Lee throws water to put out the fire, they hear a very loud, human like dog scream or howl, followed by a blood curdling scream sounding like a person in danger. Knowing there aren't supposed to be any wolves up here in Maine, or at least not in this area, the men are baffled by what the howling could be. Taking their flashlights, they begin shining all around the area, scanning in the direction of their howls. To their horror, they begin to hear footsteps of something seemingly gigantic walking towards them as it was making loud crunching and cracking noises as the sticks were breaking underneath its weight, and it seemed like it had to be bipedal. Suddenly, they see what looks to be an enormous werewolf like creature leap out from the nearby tree line and land directly in front of the men. Not knowing how to react or process what is happening, they stand there in disbelief. Suddenly, they hear two loud pops as the animal pushes itself up from its squatting position on all fours and stands back up on two canine like bent back legs. Suddenly, the animal sprints towards the men. Mike pulls out his machete and begins waving it at the beast while screaming at the top of his lungs, "Get the heck out of here!" Not heeding the men's warnings, the creature easily grabs a hold of Mike with its two human like arms and raccoon like hands. Screaming out in horror for his friends to help, Mike begins trying to hack at this creature's neck with his machete. Angered by this, the strange werewolf like creature grabbed the screaming man and ripped him in two. Having witnessed their friend being brutally torn apart and now covered in a pool of his blood and chunks of his flesh, the four remaining friends begin screaming out in horror, as if to find their horror and trauma humorous. This strange creature seemingly smiled before darting towards the rest of the group. Luke was the next closest victim to the creature, as it latched on to the man and began ripping massive chunks of flesh from the man's torso and neck. Trying to scream out for help to his friends, Luke was gargling on his own blood, begging for help before no longer breathing. Nathan and Sean now looked over at Lee and screamed, "We need to get the heck out of here." Still having their flashlights and hoping the animal would be content with already potentially partially consuming Mike and Luke, the three men began running as fast as they could in the direction of their vehicles. Nathan and Lee had reached the edge of the forest, breaking into a clearing, when suddenly they noticed Sean wasn't with them. As they stopped for a second, they still realized Sean's nowhere to be found. They begin shouting out for their lost companion, but hear no answer. To their horror, though, they hear the creature looming in the distance, growling and seemingly plotting its next move. The two remaining friends jump into their car and speed down to a store to call the local sheriff's department. To this day, the remains of Mike and Luke were never found, nor was Sean. Also, all three men are still considered missing, and it's an open case. Sadly, on June 23rd, 2021, Nathan White unalived himself due to the trauma the rest of the group had ensued that evening. As for Lee, he still has flashbacks and nightmares on a daily basis from this dreadful day he deals with imminence and depression.
Straight out of a horror movie. So
Yeah.
I'm gathering there was some sort of search party, right?
Yes, it was definitely sent out, and no one was ever able to track them down. Unfortunately, Lee is the only person that's been able to speak on this, which is unfortunate because obviously you have three missing people, so we can't speak to them. And then you have his friend that, well, obviously is no longer with us, so we can't speak to him. So, all we have to go off of is what Lee is telling us and also the files that he did submit and the fact that these people are missing. And it's pretty bizarre and terrifying stuff for sure. Like you had just said, unfortunately, though, I really don't know how much more we can ever debunk or verify this. I mean, like I said, we know what was submitted to the local authorities. We have Lee's report that's submitted to us, and we do know that these people are missing and one is no longer with us, but that's pretty much as far as I feel like I'm going to be able to verify it.
Yeah, unless a hiker or something finds some sort of remains that they could maybe identify or test as to what happened.
Yeah, and a big thing too, though, I think is with them using cave systems and such, and like I said, people going missing near cave systems. There are cave systems all around Maine as well. I mean, if they are living in those or burrows or dens, they probably took those back. So, I mean, the odds of finding remains, I feel like, are so slim, right?
Right. And as quick as nature acts on its own,
Mm-hmm.
even would be.
Yeah, it's one of those pretty interesting ones. I mean, how do you feel about all that? Like, where do you stand and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you've got three people missing, and then the other guy was so traumatized that uh, left this earth. So, I mean, what do you don't have many options as far as to what happened. Either, something the creature did take him, or you know, did the other two do something and the other guy couldn't take it anymore? Which I don't
Mm-hmm.
think is, from what you said, and them being friends and everything. It's just something you have to look at, and I'm sure they looked into it very closely.
Exactly, the officials and stuff, like you were saying. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they would have, thought he was a culprit enough, I mean, I don't see how he's a free person and he's, with the NADP and stuff for sure. So
Yeah, exactly. So
that leaves the other option. What happened out there, like you said, I mean, could it have been a bear, a black bear? I mean, like I said, black bears do attack people, but it's usually solo people that are sleeping. I mean, I don't see a black bear taking on a group of young men like that. I mean, that, I don't know. I could see a grizzly bear, sure, but I just don't see a black bear doing that. Do you?
not unless it was rabid or starving. There's stories of a black bear that was starving out west that literally started in a camp area and then worked its way down the parking lot picking anybody apart it could. But
But
that
that
was an
sounds like they were getting them solo, though,
extreme
right?
thing. It was grabbing them as it could. It was literally
Yes.
just, there were a group of people, and when one would take off, the game instinct would kick in, so he'd take that one down. Then they'd see another person running, so it'd kick in and go take that person down. And
Okay,
but
so
for a group of guys that are standing their ground, I don't know about that.
that's what I'm saying right there. So how you said it, yeah, I could totally see that aspect, even a starving one or a malnourished one. But like you just said, a group of guys and then with machete and stuff, and he was hacking at it. That seems like too much work for a malnourished bear to really be able to be successful at. I feel like it would have tried, like you said, but after taking a couple hacks with a machete, I think that might deter most predators, correct?
I would think so. And not only that, if it was something only the size of a bear, I would think the other guys would have been more inclined to jump on it and help.
Yes, instead of being like, oh crap, just standing there, more or
Yeah.
less. Like you, yeah, I mean, I would if it was a huge grizzly bear, okay, that's something different. But like you said, you have a group there, and it's like you said, if we're going with the fact that it was a malnourished black bear, then yeah, you would think that throwing rocks at it or screaming or something or just anything. But I mean, they did nothing, like, and this guy was hacking at it with a machete, supposedly. And I just would have to see you being a pretty healthy bear to not care about that. If you were a healthy grizzly bear, yeah, a couple of hacks with a machete is nothing to you. But if you're a malnourished black bear, you're already smaller and you're malnourished. That means like probably pretty high probability that machete is going to hit something that you don't want it to hit, right?
Right. And you're only 5 to 6 feet tall. And if you're malnourished, 150 pounds, 200 pounds, maybe.
That's what I'm saying, man. I mean, I think a machete could probably unalive that, correct?
Yeah. Because there's literally no fat to protect the neck or anything vital.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, if you're a big guy. If you were to swing as hard as you wanted with a machete on a grizzly bear, it's gonna feel it, but dude, that's not gonna do jack.
No.
It's gonna hit like
No.
a fat spot or like that big hump, kind of like the areas that are meant to, kind of protect the muscle and things. It's just gonna be like a. That's why they can take. I mean, every once in a while, people have been able to unalive a grizzly bear with a really good shot, but then there's other times where people don't have enough caliber in their weapon, so it never penetrates through the fat and the bone and stuff, and it just pisses it off.
Right. And I mean, you're talking a grizzly bear that can remove the cranial system of a horse, but they stand there and take each other's hits all the time. So
Yes, put our
last I
head up.
knew, they didn't have grizzlies in Maine.
I am with you on that, but I mean, I do always say there's no magic line, and I mean, Canada is right up there, and I mean, above us is Toronto and Montreal and stuff. I'm not sure where in Canada their brown bears are, but I mean, same thing with you up there in Michigan and stuff. I mean, right above you is Toronto and such, and Manitoba and things. I mean, what is or would keep a grizzly bear if it was hungry enough or exploring territory? I mean, could it not swim across to where you are? I mean, that's how those grizzly bears got to Kodiak Island, which is a pretty isolated area, man. I mean, they are grizzly bears, but they're almost a separate version of grizzly bears, which is why they're enormous, because they're isolated on Kodiak Island, but they swam there originally.
Right. And there's a place in the middle of Lake Michigan called Drummond Island that have had cougar sightings. So obviously they didn't get a helicopter drop in. They had to get across somehow, whether that was swimming or maybe across the ice when it froze over or something, who knows? But
Right. And
still,
yes,
it
I'm
could
with
be
you
a bear.
totally. It definitely is not a grizzly bear in Rangeley, but I'm just, saying that I don't really see in theory why a grizzly bear in the tips of northern Maine that's like, connected to Canada and stuff, why it potentially couldn't go down. I mean, obviously people that wouldn't want to talk about that are going to say that wouldn't occur. But same thing with like cougars, like you were saying. I mean, I've witnessed a juvenile cougar get run over before, and I mean, we have trail cams up here with them, which obviously they try to say it's a large lynx or etc. But yeah, I mean, it's like our tracker Nuxium says, man. I mean, any animal is going to come back to its native area at any point in time. Doesn't matter. I mean, for thousands of years they have been there before, so it's still in their genes. Like the 8 jaguars that were just spotted in Arizona. Why would they? I mean, Arizona used to be its territory.
Yeah. Uh, and even if it was a grizzly or black bear, why would they lie about it?
Why wouldn't they not just say it's that? Yes.
Yeah. So that, it sounds like they were very outdoor and would recognize a bear if they saw a bear and just say a bear did it without taking. I'm sure they knew when they said what happened, the ridicule that was going to come with it.
Yeah, he still gets trolled from that, bro. I mean, we all do for diving into this. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that's just taking unneeded, senseless heat for a very major tragedy. Why would you make up a Dogman when your friends are gone and make more
Yeah.
grief for yourself?
you're spot on with that, man. And I'm trying to think of other predators. I mean, even again, cougars. A cougar would not take on 5 men. A cougar is going to try to take. I mean, even if you and I were out, if we're side by side, it's not going to come at us. It's going to wait for, because I'm smaller than you. It's going to potentially hope that I'm behind you or something, and then it's going to try to grab you. Again, put itself in a situation that it would be successful in. And yeah, sure, coyotes, a very large pack, would attack a person, maybe two if it's 20 coyotes or something. But again, like you said, they didn't say anything about 20 coyotes and such, or a large pack of coyotes. They didn't say anything about a large pack of wolves. And I mean, I know at points in time, obviously, wolves were up in Maine, and I mean, they were all across the United States. And again, Canada is right up there. That's not what they said. So what other predator could it be? Fisher cats are crazy. But again, a fisher cat, yeah, could probably take one person out, seeing some of the huge ones I've seen, but I don't think it would do that unless it was really put in a situation where you were stressing it out or it was in dire need of food, and it sure as heck wouldn't come at 5 people like that. I don't know, man. It really, again, just leaves, like you said, as we're starting to kind of come to the end here, was it them, which they were cleared, and I don't think it was. And then it leaves the other aspect. It has to be something that we're not potentially recognizing or being told the full narrative about. Because again, even if that was a bear, man, the bear would have went with the first. I don't know, like you said, even in the instance when it was starving, sure, when anyone that was running, but they didn't run until 2 of them were ripped apart pretty much. So, like, I don't know. It just, nothing really kind of lines up with the predator behavior, which I do, again, stress to everybody. You can do all the research you want about predator behaviors, but I mean, even experts still get surprised by predators. Okay, a predator doesn't follow the book that you and I write about how we think they should be behaving, if that makes sense. I mean, we can gather all the feedback, we can watch them all we want, but a good depiction, even though this is a fictional movie, like in Jurassic Park, okay? You have that guy that's the expert with the raptors, okay? He knows everything about them. Well, what's she do to him in the chamber when he goes in? Well, she catches him off guard, doesn't she? And she ambushes him. Well, yes, this is a fictional movie, but that's happened to people in real life that are predator specialists. I mean, look at people that specialize in crocodiles and things and large cats, unfortunately. I mean, I'm not going to name off them because they are no longer with us, but I mean, it's an easy Google search to find out experts that lost their lives to predators that they specialized in. And why was that? Well, they apparently were caught off guard. And that shows you right there that, I mean, a predator doesn't have to have telltale signs of how it's going to act, but that is also kind of an anomaly when they act like differently like that. Because I mean, when you gather data, and obviously every black bear and grizzly bear or wolf is going to have a different personality, but they're going to do similar things because it's successful. And why change something if it's not broken? Meaning, if wolves and bears and things are able to survive a certain way, there's no need to go back to the drawing board. You see what I'm saying? That's when, well, things aren't working our way, like that super pack in Russia where they teamed up all those wolves to go take out everybody, the 400, 500 wolves. Okay, they went back to the drawing board. But that was because they were starving, and, the rabbits and things that they normally feed on got frozen. Okay, but we're not talking about any of that right there. So I don't see why any of these predators would have went back to the drawing board. I don't know, man. It's baffling because, like I said, I don't know how we can verify this anymore, but I also don't know how anything else can really debunk it either,
Yeah, this will be in the, we'll never know for sure. Well, obviously, one person knows for sure.
Yes. But like you said, that's it. That's pretty much where it's going to stand, because I don't see any other way to bring any more clarity to this topic that we spoke about. So, yeah, it's pretty bizarre, man.
Yeah, and the little details that cross over too, like the smiling, you hear that quite a bit, at least in the stuff I've heard.
Popping
Like
of the
it actually
joint. Yep.
enjoys that rush, the bones popping, which is kind of ironic. We just talked about
I
that.
know. I was gonna say that, but I was like in the flow of reading, it's just like, yeah, he's gonna pick up on that, all right?
Yeah, I mean, it literally sounds like a dislocation and relocation. Like it pops out of joint, like you got the acromion on in your shoulder. Depending where you're at, it limits your range of motion. As soon as you pop that and rotate it back, then you got more range of motion.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of really anything else to that, my friend. Like, you pretty much knocked it pretty well on the head right there. And before we let you get back to your busy schedule, even though we're linking up tomorrow night, do you have anything else you want to touch base on, or any other questions, or anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I think we'd just be overworking it at that point.
Yeah,
I
I
feel
agree, man.
condolences to your friend. I mean, that's horrible.
Yeah, pretty gnarly stuff, man, for sure. And that's why we tried to, do as much as we can to figure out what did happen to it. And that's why we try to bring light to what happened to Lee for sure, man. But thanks again for popping in tonight, man, to hang out with us and try to figure out what the heck's going on. And yeah, that was a case up here in Maine, and just another one to add to New England and the 207 and the crazy madness for sure.
Oh, it was a pleasure coming on, and this is one of those that'll cause some deep thought, and also feelings of remorse for your friend, because I can't imagine going through something like that.
Ooh, I am very happy that all you legends did make it this far to the end of the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share my content. Feed the algorithm. And I will see you very soon.